Boom. All right. So, hello, everyone, again. Today we are joined by the one, the only CJ from the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. CJ, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on here, man.
Absolutely. Some of you guys know who CJ is. Some of you guys have actually messaged me after I went, Jeremy came on and did the cryptid episode, and they listened to some of your guys' podcasts afterwards. So some of them know you, some of them are meeting you for the first time right now. So CJ, but in my opinion, from what I've heard of you speak, you have quite a bit of occult knowledge that I wanted to kind of like tap into, pick your brain about, and just kind of lead down some rabbit holes, man. See where we can go.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's sort of accurate. I have a pretty extensive interest in the occult. I'm going through an initiatory process called Quaria right now myself, which I just began. I don't know tons about it yet, but I'm working through the books. It's a pretty long process. But yeah, I'm real into Abrahamic belief, things like Goetia, Abramelin. Not that I wouldn't want to practice those myself, but they're very interesting. And divination's a thing. I really like divination a lot. I've done a little spell work in my time for years. I was into Wicca. I think Wicca is like probably where a lot of us start nowadays. And then we go, there's a lot more to it. And then, you know, I identified as a witch for a long time. Which sort of started out as sort of like, oh, look at me, I'm the edgelord kind of thing. And they got more serious.
Okay. Yeah, I know you guys, man. Yeah, we went to this, we hung out in the same groups in high school, but we weren't necessarily friends in high school. I was like the metalhead punk kid, but we were like, we had like the same friends, your people and my people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, no. And then later I started hanging out with my buddy Mike, who it's kind of weird. Like in high school, we didn't like each other and we had a couple of altercations over a girl. Well, one real altercation. We didn't like actually fight, but it almost happened. And then
it's always over a girl, man. It's always over a girl, man.
Yeah, you're like you're in high school and you just got done with puberty and the testosterone's all there. Yeah, it was dumb. But I'm actually really, really good friends with him now. And then he started introducing me to the mysteries and the mystery schools and the concepts of mysticism. And after like a month, it like changed my whole life. And I stopped identifying as a witch, and everything was about being a mystic and eventually obtaining something called the adept, being an adept. And then I got interested in things like the HGA, which after really learning what that's about, I'm not really interested in doing it myself, but it's still an incredibly interesting process. And there's a lot of really, really, what's the word I'm looking for? Like really intelligent people out there who speak on it. You're talking about guys like Aaron Leach and Dr. Steven Skinner. And those guys really know what's going on with things like Goetia and Abramelin and, Frater Ash and Jason and people like that, and super knowledgeable. And if you're ever into the idea of like mysticism and magical practice, and then later on like the mysteries and the mystery schools all the way back to ancient Egypt, these are guys like you can really look into them. Tabitha and Chick Cicero, they're the leaders of the Golden Dawn. I mean, these guys are incredible,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you're spitting out names that I don't know, but you're spitting out other ones that I do. Obviously like the Golden Dawn. I feel like that's for anybody who's gotten even this deep into like occultism, you know about the Golden Dawn, right? That's kind of like the what I would call the base level, right? Level one, you know, Hermetic Order of the Golden
Yeah.
Dawn, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When if you're really like looking into mysticism in itself,
Mysticism.
rather than straight witchcraft or just generalized magical practice or folk magic, low magic, whatever you want to call it. When you really get into mysticism, Golden Dawn's probably like one of the first names you learn. You learn about the OTA, the OTO, Amorc, the Golden Dawn, Freemasons to an extent, but they're really secretive. And um, I've met Freemasons. They'll openly tell you a lot of times that yeah, they're a Freemason, but they won't tell you anything they do.
Yeah.
Um,
I know a
to a point.
few actually, and I know one who is a pretty high level Freemason as well. I actually hit him up to see if he'd come on the podcast. I haven't heard
Mhm.
back, but fingers crossed, you know what I mean? You never know. He probably won't. He's gonna. I mean, he knows I'm a fucking conspiracy theorist, so he'd be like, "Hell no, I'm not coming to your fucking podcast, dude. You crazy?" Uh,
Yeah, man. Like, yeah, no, the Freemasons are serious, and you have some people out there that are really like, oh yeah, they're like really good people, and then you have people out there that are like, nah, fuck those guys, and you'll be like,
yeah, and I feel like that's kind of a psyop, man. I've been getting on this whole disinformation, controlled opposition research, you know, and like I'm starting to think that that whole thing might be a psyop. You know what I mean? Just to make you think that, make everybody think that, and it's not necessarily
mhm.
true. You know?
Yeah, I've never like I've met a number of Freemasons, and I've met people who are related to Freemasons. I've been inside homes owned by a Freemason, and I've never experienced an individual who I wouldn't sit down and hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've all been like really nice people, and I've never felt a type of way around them. Like, like you get around people and like you can feel that energy they give off, and you'll be looking at somebody and they're like, there's something not right with you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. There's a smile on your face and you're acting real cool, but there's something not right about you.
Yeah.
And I've never had those feelings around those people. They've always been like real decent individuals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ones I know are honestly are great people, and I knew them before they were Freemasons, and they were great people then too. So, I think that there is like a level of let's demonize something like on purpose. Like let's say they, right, like the controllers, you know, if they know that there's
Mhm.
people that are interested in finding out who they are, they may put information out there that'll be like, oh, let's demonize Freemasons, maybe attach it to like things like reptilians and these things like, and then the mass consciousness will just automatically attribute, you know, if I say any kind of conspiracy, 9/11 or anything, right? Everybody's like, oh, you think the Freemason reptilian beings are fucking running the world. And in reality, they are pulling strings, but everybody just sounds like a fucking moron.
I mean, yeah, they definitely have positions of power, and they definitely have some modicum of control,
Mm-hmm.
either nationally or even globally to an extent. Um, but I've never really heard anybody equate them to like reptilians or like compare them or include them with the concept of reptilians. But maybe it's just because I haven't really looked into that very much.
Mm-hmm.
More often I hear them lumped in with like Illuminati or Skull and Bones, things
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, all that's the same stuff. I mean, again, like I feel like people who have heard of a lot of these conspiracies, right? That they just
Hmm.
attribute the first thing in their mind to like all of these things at once. You know, if you believe in the Illuminati, you must believe in all these other little things that I've heard about, you know.
Yeah, and I think I kind of feel like when they demonize these groups of people like the Freemasons, because like I mean everyone knows the Freemasons are super secretive. Unless you're a Mason, you don't really know what's going on. Like you can learn to recognize some of their symbology.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll be driving and I'll see something on the back of somebody's car. It'll be like the compass with like a thing through it. And I'm like, oh, that's a Mason symbol. Do I know what it means? No, but I know it's a Mason symbol. I've seen it before.
Right.
But like, and they hold on to their secrets and they're exclusive. And to get into the Masons, like you have to befriend a Mason who has to vouch for you, and they won't even do that until they know you really well. And there's this whole process, and we go about and we demonize these groups and these people. And I mean, overall, like when it comes to the occult scene, the mysticism scene, the magic scene, whatever part of that you're into, because like you can be in parts of that and not others. You can be in the magic and not be an occultist. And I mean, honestly, like occult just means hidden, and we're not really hidden anymore. So it's
Mm.
in a way it's an inappropriate term if you think about it. But people know what you're talking about when you're like, oh, I do this and this and this and this, or like, oh, I'm trying to get into Amorc, and they're like, what's that? And you're like, oh, it's a Rosicrucian society, and they're like, what the hell is that? You're like, it's an occult society, and they're like, oh, okay,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you have that.
Labels, man.
But
Labels are dangerous. It's you get put in one, it's hard to get out of one.
yeah, for sure. And you know, throughout the last several hundred years, maybe the last 2,000 years, uh, it's been a thing. Like, get rid of the pagans.
Mhm.
Get rid of anything earth worship. Get rid of anything.
Drive the snakes from Ireland, dig
Not
up all the earth mounds, fucking hide all the
oh, St.
archaeology.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that shit. Oh, St. Patrick drove the snakes from Ireland. That's why there's no snakes there. No, bitch. That's not.
No, he
That's not what that
exterminated the
is,
Druids.
man.
I say
Like,
this on like every other podcast. It was a genocide, right? They exterminated the
yeah,
fucking, if you want to say indigenous people. I mean, the people who lived there at the time probably exterminated the people who lived there before them, however many thousand years prior, and so on and so forth. I feel like there's this cyclical thing that humans just do. We exterminate each other, take
man.
over, and like now there's a new breed of humans on this land.
Yeah, certain groups. I mean, I don't like bastardizing the Christian faith. Wow, the Christian faith. Because there's a lot of really valuable information within the Christian faith, especially when you go back to. I cannot support the King James version of the Bible at all. But like if you go to different versions and you go past that one, there's a lot of really valuable mystic information in there. And Jesus Christ himself was an amazing metaphysicist. And he did all kinds of incredible things, like performed alchemy and just these really transcendental conversations he had. And he really had these um, what's like these inner access to like the different planes of existence. And when he talks about his father, he talks about God and himself, and it almost feels like when you read into it, it almost feels like he's talking about the source. But we're also talking about the God from the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, it starts off with Elohim, which is Yiddish, and that means gods. Like it's a plural word. And then they go on, and then they say that they created man in their image. Like everything is very plural, it's very intentional. And they like to ignore that. Um,
And,
Jesus was a savage, though. Like
mhm,
he cursed a fig tree
yeah.
for fun. Like
S-
he got pissed off that it didn't have fruit on it, and he cursed it.
Yeah.
Like
And speaking of
it's
that,
insane.
speaking of the, well, hold on. First of all, your microphone's crackling just a little bit. I don't know if you can hear yours. I don't know if your plug maybe is a little bit
Is that
off.
better?
Yeah, that's good. Say something again.
Is that better now?
Yeah, that sounds good. Sorry, everybody.
Okay.
But damn, I lost my train of thought too. Fucking. Anyways, continue. Sorry. Anyways, you were saying.
Um, no, it was just thoughts on Christianity as a whole. And nowadays, like they took a lot of pagan culture, and that was really like the Catholics. We'll be honest, the Catholics did that. They absorbed a lot of pagan culture, and the the one thing, and we might lose some people in this one. The one big issue I have with the Bible is the resurrection story.
Mm.
Um, that's blatantly plagiarized. I
Yeah,
can't. What was the
and
name?
I've said this before.
Tammuz?
Yeah, I've said this before that a lot of the stories in any, it doesn't matter where you start, whether you start with the Bible or you start with any other religious text, a lot of them have the same stories. So, in my personal opinion, what's the oldest story, right? And I don't think we found
Mhm.
that yet. Or I'm not going to say we haven't found it. In my personal opinion, history is being hidden from us because I'm the conspiracy guy, right? But we haven't found the oldest one yet. So
Mhm.
that's my
Yeah,
personal.
I just had a little bit of a theological discussion yesterday with some people. They had posted a meme saying like astrology equals not God and magic equals not God. It was like this list. So I went on there and I was like, I understand like you believe all this and whatnot. Like I willing if you post something like that, I will engage you in a conversation. I don't like to debate. I don't like to argue. But I will ask you questions about your faith because obviously you feel a type of way. If you feel that you need to post something like that on a public forum, um, you obviously feel strongly enough that
You're welcoming
you know
conversation in any form that is, whether it's a debate or not, or people agreeing with you. If you post anything on the internet, you are welcoming a conversation. That's it.
right,
So
right. And I'll never shit on you for your what you could sit here and I like to describe myself as a non-denominational polytheistic pagan, which to me basically means if you believe in it and you cannot prove to me that it doesn't exist, I'll believe that it exists on some level.
so non-denominational, so no particular sect, polytheistic, so could be multiple gods or any one god. It doesn't matter. It could be any, right?
Right.
And what was the last part?
Pagan.
Pagan.
So
So
n- the literal definition of a pagan is any non-major religion. Right. So
I could
Rosicrucian.
identify as that, right? See, I don't like to
Yeah.
use labels, but that sounds like something that I could go with. I don't know the answers, but I'm open to pretty much any and every possibility that can't necessarily be debunked, which is almost none of them,
All
right? Yeah,
well, yeah, like I mean, you can't say that the Christian faith is wrong. You
right,
can't say Islam is wrong. You can't say Judaism. You can't
right.
say Zoroastrian is wrong or Rosicrucian because there's only one way to find out, and none of us are coming back with a
Mhm.
report.
And speaking of this, this is a good point I want to bring up because just today, and I'm actually going to post this episode probably like tonight or tomorrow morning, but just today I posted something in my group that is a little talk between three high level scientists, right? One's a mathematician, one's a biologist, and another one is like a computer scientist, I think, or something, or philosopher. And they're talking about the death of Darwinism, right? And
Hmm.
how Darwinism has essentially been debunked and disproved based off of mathematics and all these things. And all of these different scientists are agreeing with each other on this, right? But the
Hmm.
conclusion that they're coming to is that because of the number of possible proteins that could have been created to create different life forms and all the time that's here and all the life forms that exist, they do the math. And because of the chances, their conclusion is there must be intelligent design. Now, they don't use any particular uh, religion or anything, they very very careful to steer away from like any particular one thing. They're just like there is intelligent design just based off the numbers of life forms that have been created on this planet.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah, a lot of scientific research and even Albert Einstein said that
mhm,
that when you get down to the basis of it, you can trace back everything you want, and eventually you'll encounter God.
mhm,
or or some sort of intelligent
yeah,
design. And in a way, it makes sense. And like in even more scientific train of thought, when you look at matter, like you're touching things and whatnot, um, technically matter doesn't really exist, right? So we have matter, which is made of molecules, which is made of atoms, and then you get down to what are atoms, and atoms is particles. And what are these particles? They're energy. But what makes them so they vibrate. This energy vibrates in a specific way that allows it to behave like matter
mm,
to let us touch it. So matter doesn't actually exist, and we're all some sort of vibrating energy, and energy can be equated to light, um, all whatever, all kind. You know what I'm talking about.
yeah, it's a hologram.
In a way, I guess you could call it that. Sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for something right here. I'm looking at my computer for a document that I have. Yeah, it's a hologram. I mean, if you look up what the definition of a hologram is, it's literally light interacting with sound, right? To
Hmm.
create this hologram. So the CIA has this document. I have an episode on it. Damn, I can't find where it is, but I have a whole episode on it. It's called the analysis and the assessment of gateway process. I think I told you guys about it as well on one of your upcoming episodes. But
Hmm.
their their conclusion is literally that the whole universe is a hologram, and so is our minds. Right? This is the Army Intelligence Command reporting back to uh, the Operational Intelligence Command at the Pentagon.
Mm,
So
okay.
you know what I mean?
Man, it's all really interesting. And like when it comes down to certain things, like You can actually read this for free online. What you have to do is just type in the name in Google. It'll come up. It's a free book. It's called The Kybalion. And a lot of times it's really everybody's first book on like mysticism. And it is very much so an introductory piece. A lot of people will swear by it, like, oh, the Kybalion, and this is the one truth, and blah, 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 blah. And I've heard this on several occasions. And um, even the Kybalion itself doesn't even say that. It says it's a foundational work.
Mhm.
It will allow you the idea like into these concepts. And I completely forgot where I was going with that.
That's all
I
good.
was I was headed I was headed in a direction and I fucked it all up.
That's cool. I found the
Uh,
document when you forgot it, so it's like a synchronicity there. But
there
yeah,
we
this
go.
this is it. The approved for release in 2010, Department of the Army Intelligence Group, blah 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 blah. But this is literally the commander of the U.S. Army Operational Group at Fort Meade, which is where they do Project Stargate, right? And this Project Stargate is
Okay.
also the U.S. Army intelligence, so it's the same people, okay? And they report back to the boss man, big boss, and right here, the consciousness matrix. The universe is composed of interacting energy fields, some at rest and some in motion. It is, in and of itself, one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. And then here's a theory. According to the theories of Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford, and David Bohm, a physicist at the University of London, the human mind is also a hologram, which attunes itself to the universal hologram by the medium of energy exchange, thereby deducing meaning and achieving the state which we all call consciousness.
Hmm. I mean, that kind of goes. It kind of goes with the mystic way of thinking that I subscribe to myself, where the main thing is, you know, the all is mind and the universe is mental. So the idea is that everything that exists within the mind of the all, and everything that is a mental projection of the all. And right now, like it's like a hologram, like you described, because that sort of lines up with what that is. And but we experience that, and like that's our reality,
Mhm.
right? Like that is what we are until the day comes when the all reabsorbs everything and we become one with the all. We are no more on the individual. We are the all, and one with the source.
Isn't
And
it
oh, I
like
mean,
the all is all and all is the all or something?
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, 100. That I mean, that was pretty much 100% accurate. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that concept because, because it's the idea of like a lot of people like have this like afterlife where you live in an eternity of bliss, or you burn in an eternity of hell, or whatever it is you follow. And the idea that we are merely facets of the all's imagination, and we exist while it sees fit to imagine us, and one day it'll stop imagining us and it will reabsorb us. um and that makes a lot of people uncomfortable and like, well, why am I fucking doing anything then? Well, because while he's imagining us, it is our reality. This is our existence. We are not real for the all, but we are real for us. And we experience what we're experiencing now because that's what we're intended to experience.
Mm.
Not in a sense of fate or destiny in that aspect, but we experience it because the all wants us to.
It's almost as if the entire universe or encapsulated flat earth, whichever you believe in, right? It's almost as if the entire thing is just like a thought experiment, like
Oh
down
yeah,
down to the molecules and the vibrations of the fucking everything. It's all just a thought experiment by some a supreme mind, right?
right, right. Exactly. I mean, and you can do something similar. The all, because we're all a part of the all. We are all a piece of it. We are ourselves, but we are the all at the same time. But only the all is conscious of that, which it sounds like a really complex thing, and it really is complex and it's very difficult to understand. And it does make a lot of people uncomfortable. But you can do something similar to kind of bring an understanding to that. All you have to do is sit there and imagine a house, and then within that house, imagine a family and picture those people. Um, And that is on a very, very simplistic form. We're talking, we'd be working on DOS level while the all is working with trillions of terabytes of information, right? We can't do the complexity that the all does and
Right.
imagines. But it's like when you picture that house, you picture that family, and you can imagine the different things that they're doing and interacting in their own lives. For a brief moment, you're experiencing what the all has done to create us. We're just self-entertainment. We're a daydream.
Hmm.
We're an illusion. Which people don't like. But I mean, at the same time, it kind of opens up opportunity, right? So the way I see all these different religious faiths, everything from the Abrahamic traditions to the more mystic traditions to shamanism to Shintoism and things like that, is that nobody really is wrong, right? So we're all in this giant illusion, and the all is imagining all of this, which gives us the ability to experience all these various things. So when it comes to things such as the afterlife, and what's beyond the third dimension that we're currently in, it you can kind of equate it to like a video game, right? We're all playing on the same console. We're just not necessarily all playing the same game, right? And when you finally beat that game, your game, whatever game you've chosen to play, whether you're playing the Christian game or you're playing the Islam game or you're playing the Hindu game, when you get there, you're going to experience the end game for that because that's what you work toward and that's what you believe in. And that's what you're going to experience because that's what you've envisioned and that's where you've placed your energy,
Hmm.
right? So in my way of thinking, everyone is valid while equally invalid at the same time. Which really kind of opens up a lot of doors to a lot of very powerful experiences you can experience, especially if you practice things like magic. So if we have the power to decide where we're going to end up when our time in the third dimension ends, then we also should be able to possess the power to manipulate those energies other ways as well, which is where you get into spell work and ritual and ceremony. Um, and for me, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to you in the same aspect.
Yeah, the way I think of magic, to be honest, on the deepest level, is everything that you do essentially is a form of a magic ritual. Well, not everything, but most things, right? So, like if you're religious in any religion, when you show up to your church and you do the rituals, you sing the hymns and you get up and you eat the thing and you drink the thing, you do the thing. It's all just like a ritual. And it's almost,
Mhm.
in my opinion, no different than if you were out doing some other form of magic. And then I also feel that spelling and even words, just the fact that you and I are speaking with certain words and characters and sounds that have been created by someone or something, right? That we are essentially creating a spell just by spelling or by speaking and, having this
Mhm.
conversation.
I'm actually really glad you said it because now I remember why I brought up the Kybalion in the fucking first place. My friend had posted that meme on
Hmm.
the Facebook there, and we had that conversation, and
The
they
old
were saying that all
Facebook
these
there,
things are
the old Facebook.
yeah. Honestly, if it wasn't for podcasting, I wouldn't even fuck with Facebook.
I'm with you, man. At this
Like
point,
that's
I
where I
was ready
do.
to go, and I keep telling people I need Facebook to kick me off of Facebook so that I can just kill the habit, because I need help. I need help with my own addiction.
I, I I just use it for podcast networking most of the time. I just post bullshit pictures, and then once in a while, I engage in what I consider an intelligent conversation, or what I hope can be an intelligent conversation. Um, but they were going off like, oh, well, this is not God, this is not God, and I had said to them, I was like, you know, um, if you really want to think about it, the prophets within the Christian faith did everything that practitioners of magic do nowadays. The only difference is they say in His name, Amen afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, like I say, even Jesus Christ Himself,
Hmm.
amazing prophet, amazing metaphysician, like and really insightful and had the ability to tap into forces that you know you really need to reach an advanced level of adeptitude
Hmm.
to experience yourself. Even if I don't even know if it's possible to experience on that level. Like that was a gifted man. Um, you know, all of this magical practice and whatnot. And like you said, like within the church, they do it all the time. You have these ritual like what's it called? With the communion,
Mm.
Holy Communion, when
Hmm.
you go and you have the Eucharist and then the blood of Christ. And the idea is like when within the Christian faith is like when you drink the wine and then you eat the little bread or the wafer, whatever it is they're giving you that day, depending on the building that you're attending service in, is that when it enters your body, it transforms into. So it's like another form of internal alchemy, and they do it in a very ritualized pattern. And Catholics in themselves, they even have talismans. They keep remains of saints, and they call them talismans. Orthodoxy utilizes icons, which when you look in things like Goetia and Abramelin, they utilize icons in their altars because they want to talk to angels like Michael, and then like to entice Michael to speak with you, you need an icon behind your
Hmm.
altar. Um, and it's just like all this fantastic stuff, and then but they have like this weird, like, it's almost like magic is a spider to them. They're like, ew, icky, right? And they don't ever want to admit that, like, yeah, they perform magic. So if you think about it, like when somebody is practicing magic, most of the time, I mean, not necessarily with things like folk magic where like you write a word or a phrase down on a bay leaf and burn it and releases that energy, and but when you're doing ceremony or like a ritual, the basis is you are asking a deity through some form of offering and practice to manifest something into your life, some sort of change. Um, you pray to them, you give them offerings, you can sacrifice to them, you perform these rituals, these ceremonies, you can attend crowded events, and the Christian faith does all of that. But instead of saying, well, prayer is prayer, but instead of saying, oh, we're doing a ritual today, um, oh, it's a baptism, oh, it's a communion.
Hmm.
Okay. But those are rituals. Those are
Right.
ceremony. That's ceremonial magic. You are when you are baptized underwater, water is the element of life. That is where life begins, is
Hmm.
water. And you run that water over your head, you're basically accepting the element of life and offering yourself to that. Um and this baptism, and it binds you with God, like you're understand, like through the essence of life, I bind myself to my deity. That is a spell. That is a ritual in itself. You're tapping into one of the elements to bind yourself to a deity.
Mm. It's
You
very
know that,
interesting. I never really thought about that using the elemental aspect that
yeah,
way, but that is really interesting.
yeah, yeah. You go into a Catholic church, you light a candle, you ask for a favor,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what that's a very common practice. Like a lot of people like to call it. A lot of people will classify it as candle magic, whatever you want to call it. That's fine, but almost every single magical practice involves candles.
Hmm.
And you have special candles for doing what you want to do, and you light the candle and you ask for a favor. There's almost no difference between Christian practice and pagan practice when it comes to interacting with your deities, other than pagans will take it several steps further because they're willing to accept that this is magic, this is sorcery, this is what I'm doing. I have an understanding that I'm interacting with a deity, whether you interact with respect or you try to do that. Some people will try to do some shit like they'll like threaten it, like you will do as I say, or I will put you through hell or whatever. Um, which is whatever. If it works for you, it works for you. It's not the same path that I would take. I don't really
Can I
think that pissing off otherworldly beings are a good idea, but whatever.
Yeah, and you're making me think of a few things, so I don't want to lose my train of thought, but I don't mean to cut you off. But let me get a quick baseline from you, CJ, because this,
Okay.
obviously you said you listened to the Shadow Band. I'm deep in the fucking rabbit hole. I don't know what's true anymore. I don't have any trust for the establishment. You know what I mean? Do
Right.
you, where are you at with that? Like, do you think that there is like an elite, and I'm not talking about like the Illuminati, but do you think there's like an elite class of people that are kind of like running the fucking show?
Oh, I 100% believe in a one world government.
Mm,
There
okay.
is one organization that runs everything, and then they utilize things like war, racial divide, um, slavery. That's still going on today. I mean, nothing really puts a fire under people's ass like slavery.
Hmm.
Back then to this day,
Let me ask you
nobody's cool
this.
with that. Like,
What do you think that one group believes? Like, what do you think would be their magic practice if you had to
oh
pick,
man,
if you had to guess?
you
My
know,
whole
it's
thing is Saturn. I don't know if you've ever heard me get on the Saturn talk. I don't know if you've ever listened to like David Icke or, some of these people that talk about like the Saturn matrix and like how, a lot of these guys were talking about the demiurge and Yaldabaoth and how it connects to Saturn and Satan and all this shit, and Moloch and Baal and how that's all
mhm.
intertwined. Do you think there's any validity to that with the elite group?
It's, it really is possible. Um, but I mean, this while this group would be a lower number, I still imagine it's probably several hundred people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably specific families. I'm not necessarily saying like, oh, it's the Rothschilds
Sure.
and the Bushes and
Right. Because you
whatever.
can
But
find the list of the 13 families on Google, but it's like, you're searching on the gulag, right? So how the fuck do you know?
right.
You
And
know,
it probably is like a series of families and it probably spans several hundred people where they manage 7+ billion people every day. And well, how do we keep them complacent? Well, let's have a war over here. Let's
if
allow
there's 7
religion
billion
here, but not
people.
there. Right. Like whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just managing everybody.
Yeah.
So like what do they believe? They believe in something. Maybe. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're atheists. Maybe they're like, nah, whatever.
Hmm.
And maybe that's how they get past the consciousness of being completely okay with killing millions of people every day.
Karma, like the whole karma thing. Because I always assumed that
Yeah.
maybe because, in a lot of this esoteric knowledge, right, or whatever you want to call it, there's the whole idea of free will, and you kind of have to like uh, give yourself up or offer your will away, or you have to ask for the shit, when you're interacting with these entities or these deities, right?
Yeah, yeah, you really do. And the bigger the task you ask for, you know, maybe if you catch one in a good mood, they might be like, yeah, I'll help you out. Sure. Most of the time, they're going to be like, well, I'm going to need you to put up an altar, and that altar is going to need to contain this sigil, that sigil, that sigil. I need this icon, and I want this offering, and you're going to do it this many times a week. And I'm a big fan of a podcast called Glitch Bottle, and Alexander F puts it in a really, really good way. Some of them are very easy to work with, and some of them are extreme taskmasters. You
Mm.
know, so if this one world government is utilizing deities to manage what they're trying to do in their operations, they to wield that kind of power, there's some serious work going on, and that goes beyond Satan. Like, and it's kind of crazy. It's like Satan is not necessarily the devil, right? In the Bible specifies Lucifer. Okay. So Lucifer is this angel who, due to pride, was cast from heaven and placed into hell. Lucifer is not the reason hell exists. Hell existed before Lucifer did, right? He just got put in charge of it. Which if you go to Unexplained Inc., Jake really kind of goes in on that concept pretty strongly, and there's a lot of good information there. But what a lot of Christians don't realize is that Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Satan are three different individuals,
Hmm.
right? They are the overlords of what you would consider what a Christian would call hell. It's not necessarily hell. It could be like the underworld. These are cathartic spirits. Um, cathartic, is that the word? I think that's the word.
So let me ask you this, right? In Revelations, right, God is supposed to use Lucifer to enact a final deception, right, on humanity. It's as if God is creating the final deception for humanity as a test, right?
Right.
And I forget who it was, but one of these Greek schmucks back in Greek times said that like the demiurge is Saturn. So I wonder if Satan, this other entity, right, not
Mhm.
Lucifer, is the deception entity that God has created, right? Satan is this new
Mhm.
deception entity, right?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I
I
don't know.
mean,
I don't know why
it's
I'm thinking of
completely
that. You just fucking
well.
made me.
No, I mean, like, it makes sense. So it's like you have the Holy Trinity, Jesus, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the
Mhm.
Holy Trinity, right? That's the Christian faith. Um, but then these are uh the underworld Trinity, like the darkness Trinity. You know, Satan, Beelzebub, Lucifer, and then they have four kings under each of them. And a lot of people are familiar with a few of them. They have like Paimon, Agamemnon, um, uh,
Agamemnon. What is that from? Agamemnon.
he's one of the kings of hell underneath Lucifer specifically. The other two have their own four kings. I can't honestly, I can't call. I don't mess with chthonic. Chthonic, that was the word I was looking for. Chthonic spirits.
Hmm.
I don't mess with them at all. Actually, I don't mess with any sort of evocation. Um, I have a relationship with a single spirit right now. That spirit found me. We don't have a bond. We don't have an agreement. She does whatever the fuck she wants. She's cool. We interact. We have a friendship. That is the bond, but we don't have an agreement. A lot
Got
of
you an
people will
open
bind.
relationship with a spirit, bro. That's nice.
No, it's cool, man. Like, she's pretty dope. I don't really do magical practice with her. We just have like a friendly relationship, sort of like allies in a way. Um, but like people will bind spirits to crystals and all kinds of talismans and ask for services and things like
Right.
that. And I personally don't understand enough about evocation myself to begin working in that manner. Um, and it can be dangerous. They say like you summon an underworld spirit and they're not cool
Hmm.
sometimes, you know. Uh, you have to be within a protective circle because if you just evoke a spirit, like a lot of times, like in things like Goetia, it's about uh, forming a relationship with an entity before you evoke them
Mm.
and then ask them for favors. So you don't work. It's a very long process. A lot of times when you want to evoke a particular entity and ask them for things, you build a relationship, you build a trust, you build a bond, you evoke them, you discuss things, you find out what they want in exchange. Like, and it's a whole process. A lot of people who get into the world of magic don't really see it that way. They'll go pick up the Lesser Key of Solomon and just start running through all 72. And you don't want to do that. You know, like that could end up very badly for you. You're playing a very dangerous game. It's very, very important when working with spirits, otherworldly deities, that you take things slowly, which is the reason I don't do it.
Mm.
I don't do it. I have a little guy in the house, you know, playing. If you play with fire and you don't understand it, you will get burned. Like
Yeah.
that's all. Like you can't have oily rags around you and like containers of gasoline and just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play with this flamethrower.
Hmm.
You know,
Do you think that do
so
you
stuff
think that interacting with these entities, because I know in some beliefs, doing any kind of magic or I guess maybe even just manipulating this reality using magic, it speeds up the karmic process. Do you believe that that is true?
like threefold law.
I'm not sure.
Um, do I necessarily believe? So in threefold law, anything you put out comes back to you threefold,
Hmm.
good or bad, right?
That could be where that originates from, that
Um,
idea. Yeah.
that's a very witchcraft and Wicca type view. There is a difference between witchcraft and there is a difference between Wicca. They're not one and the same. A lot of people equate them together, but they're not. Wicca was Gerald Gardner. I think he formed it in like the 40s or something like that, and it really picked up steam. Like, well, it started to get more popular in the early 70s and really picked up steam in the 90s into the early 2000s, and then it goes through today, whatever. Um, Witchcraft is far older than that, and I mean, maybe it's really the whole thing with karma. I obey threefold law because that's not waters that I want to test.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of like think about this way. Like, when you were a kid, you were growing up, you had mom and dad around, or one parent, or whatever situation you were in. You had some sort of authority figure. There were certain things you just would not do because you weren't sure of what the reaction would be. You just knew you wouldn't like it.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
So I tend, like, I will obey the properties of threefold law because I don't know whether it exists or not, and it's not waters I'm willing to mess around with.
Fair enough. What about Ouija boards? What's your feeling on Ouija boards?
I don't fuck with Ouija boards. I won't let them in my house. I
Do you think Ouija
it's
boards
not that
are
a Ouija.
different than like Ouija board print on some shit? Like if if somebody had like a fucking Ouija board shower curtain, right? Is that the same?
Okay, no, I mean like that's not a big deal. Um, the thing is, it's a tool, right? Everything, all these items you use within practice is a tool. Whether you're using it to communicate or utilize change. At the end of the magic is a science. It's the manipulation of energy to create change. It's science. It's just not recognized by academic science, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have these tools. It's no different than having a beaker or a test tube or a Bunsen burner or a scale. It's a
What the
tool and it
fuck?
serves a purpose.
Sorry, I got signed out of
Yeah,
my
see, you're
I got signed out of my thing somewhere. As soon as I started talking about Ouija boards, bro, the fucking suits or some shit, dude. I'm still recording, so
well.
I'm assuming that this like we're still being recorded right now, but I don't know, so I'm just
Yeah,
checking. I'm sorry, I don't mean to like
yeah,
ruin your fucking train of thought.
you're good. No, you didn't. But it's actually a really common topic that I've discussed with other people. When you begin talking to, especially people who have no experience within the metaphysical, Ouija boards always get brought up because that's what everybody knows. Like Hasbro puts them out for ages 8+. Like you gotta be 21 to drink, 8 years old to summon the devil, right? Um, but the Ouija board in itself, like it's a very specific tool, but you can make one, right? The main thing that's really important is the little triangle device with the window in it, which the name of that escapes me right now.
Same.
It's a weird word. Um, but I mean, you could get a piece of construction paper out and write letters and numbers and the words yes and no and hello and goodbye on it. And there you go. You have a Ouija board, but you need the little device to make it work, right? And you need the intention. Uh, when it comes to something like a Ouija board, it's minor evocation in a way. You're not actually forcefully summoning a spirit and requesting its presence. You're opening a doorway and allowing a spirit to show up, right? So, could you safely use a Ouija board? Yes. I 100% believe you can safely use a Ouija board if you have the knowledge and experience to protect yourself first. Your circles, your barriers, um, the various rituals, incantations, lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, whatever it is that you do, you could utilize that tool in a safe manner. Is everything foolproof? No. I got a black mirror 5 feet away from me. I've done nothing with that yet. I created it and consecrated it because I knew eventually I'm going to want to use it, but I don't yet.
Hmm.
But that's a scrying tool. It's similar to the concept of the Ouija board, but you get a visual if it's done properly. Scrying that's a whole other world. And I'm looking forward to learning about it in the future. So I'm just gathering my tools now and making sure that I have everything that I need, and then I'll gain the knowledge, and then probably find somebody who knows what they're doing to teach me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of the Ouija board. The reason I won't allow them in my house is because spirits will attach themselves to things. So a lot of times, I believe it was Aaron Leach I was listening to. He talks about how you can provide a coin, a ring, a talisman, something like that, and that allows a spirit to inhabit it, right? So along that line of thought, if you're using something like a Ouija board, you've allowed that spirit to come in, you've engaged it in conversation, um, you've interacted with it. It could theoretically bind itself to that Ouija board. The thing is, if you have a Ouija board, you want to come to my house, you want to bring it. You can tell me until you're blue in the face where that Ouija board has been and what it's been used for. I can't trust that because I wasn't there.
Hmm.
And you have no way to prove to me that you're not lying to me. Everybody lies. All human beings lie. I think it's like 7 to 8 times a day your average human being tells some sort of lie. things from very minor white lies to major lies, whatever.
So,
But
okay, go ahead.
yeah, I can't trust somebody in their use of something, especially if you're dabbling in the occult without realizing you're dabbling into the occult, and you're accessing something that has the potential to be very dangerous. It can be very good. You
Yeah.
could have been very lucky, but it could be extremely dangerous.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to throw this out here. This is a wild theory. I have not done any research on this, but I have come across it. The Ouija boards. The theory is that in the manufacturing process, and maybe not of all Ouija boards, because of course, like everybody's fucking probably making them now, but like back in the day when they were first starting to be like mass produced, right? That it was only by a couple of small companies and there's connections, blah blah blah. And the theory was that they, like, I guess what you're saying,
Hey, you just cut
attach.
out really bad for me, and
Am I back?
you cut out real bad for me for a moment there, and I missed like a
Okay,
solid 15 seconds.
that's cool. But the idea is that when they were manufacturing, like back in the day, the Ouija boards, that they were essentially casting a spell on them. And I guess, like you're saying, maybe they were attaching entities to the first Ouija boards that were being mass produced. Excuse me. So, like you're saying, even if you're getting a fucking brand new one, we don't know that these occult people at the top weren't fucking attaching shit during the manufacturing process with some weird occult ritual. You know what I mean? And I was like, that's interesting. It could be.
I mean, I guess, but like what I know of evocation is, you know, for them, if you're mass producing hundreds, thousands, millions of a product, um, to stand there and attach an individual spirit to each and every one of
No,
them,
that wasn't the idea. The idea was more that I guess maybe the grounds that these factories were built on, and or like the products that were the materials being used were like cursed, right? Like the actual materials
uh,
themselves, right?
yeah, I guess like if you opened a portal and
Mhm. I don't know. It's just crazy
performed
theory.
some
I was
sort of a
looking into
ritual.
Ouija boards back in the day, and I had come across that in my little fucking deep dives.
I mean, it's weird when you look at the history of the Ouija board, because the Ouija board wasn't always regarded as satanic or demonic or anything
Right.
like that. Like, it was a really common household thing. Like seances, like people used to get together. They'd be like, "Oh, hey, we're gonna go have a seance on Friday night at so and so's house," and like this was normal. Like
Right.
this was entertainment. Like people did this all the time, and nobody would bat an eye. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna sounds cool. I'll be there. I'll bring some beer." Um, and then it was actually the movie The Exorcist when it came out. The Exorcist is the reason that everybody demonizes the Ouija board now, because it
Mhm.
portrayed it in that fashion. So this movie comes out, it shows the Ouija board being used for these evil purposes. Somebody higher up within the Catholic Church sees this movie and goes, "Fuck that."
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes
And
more
that's
sense for sure. I mean, I'm not
yeah,
stuck to the other theory at all, but it was interesting.
yeah. Well, I mean, like that's actually documented and recorded. Like that is what happened. Like the movie
Sure.
The Exorcist came out, and frick the guy's name. I don't remember the guy's name, but it was like some bishop or whatever. He sees this movie and he goes, "Yep, nope, done with that, canceled." Right. So it was somebody who saw something being used and didn't understand it, and like that's the biggest issue when it comes to things like occultism, is people who don't understand it see it and it's scary,
Mm,
right? You hear tales of the boogeyman, or the monster under your bed, or you know vampires. Like they're one of the oldest things out there. They dig up ancient bodies with bricks in their mouths because people are like, oh, it's a vampire. Put a brick in his mouth, he can't come
right.
back to life. Whatever.
And
Weird.
even them,
You
there
know.
was like
Pe-
an element of free will with the vampires, right? Wasn't there like some kind of element of that you had to kind of invite them or something? I don't know. Originally, not like in the pop culture.
there's there's really a lot of legend when it comes to vampires, and some of them, yeah, you have to invite them into your house for them to get in. Recently, I learned that apparently, in some obscure way, vampires were rumored to have an obsession with counting, which I knew about leprechauns. Like if a leprechaun chasing you, like you dump a salt shaker
Dude,
on the
that's
ground, it
so
has to stop and
crazy.
count
Think
each
about the
grain of
guy
salt.
from the fucking Sesame Street, bro. Count fucking Dracula or whatever
Well,
his
I was
name
just
was.
about to say that.
Oh,
Yeah, the Count. He was inspired by that
oh,
old legend for counting. That's why
just
he's a
melted my
vampire.
childhood brain,
It's
dude.
crazy, right?
and that's
right?
like a spell, bro.
It's
If he,
insane.
I
The
always
vampires have
thought,
so much lore.
yeah, like I always thought, not always, but like, getting into this shit when I think about things like Sesame Street, right? Like that they're doing spells, right? Like he was doing fucking spells. He's counting fucking numbers. And I bet you if somebody analyzed all of the numbers that he was, I bet you there's some numerology shit there. You know what I mean?
Probably. I mean, dude, the occult has been around us since day one, since your first birthday, since you know, let's talk about birthdays. The whole blowing out your candles,
Mm,
right? So that's a ritual they used to do for Artemis. You would have a cake and it had candles, and you would make a wish. And if you were able to blow all of the candles out in a single breath, your Artemis would help you out with whatever you were asking for. And it was an old school evocation ritual for the deity Artemis to ask her for a favor.
mm.
We do that every fucking year while breaking copyright laws to sing a stupid song Warner Brothers owns. Right? Christians do this. Like they everybody participates in weird occult rituals that, you know, we don't really understand. We hang Christmas trees on our doors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, people hang a cross by our front door. That's old Irish superstition. Um, and the cross itself, like brandishing the cross to evil, that's occultic behavior, but we don't want to admit that because Jesus said no witchcraft or whatever. I don't recall really seeing like anything in the Bible damning witchcraft in itself, but I mean, whatever, interpretation's
I
interpretation.
mean, again, like they were
Um,
driving the snakes out of Ireland. They were wiping out this information. They were hiding history, right? They were literally rewriting
right.
history books. And I'm not just going to point fingers and say it
Mhm.
was just them, because again, I feel like all cultures at some point in the distant human history have done this to some extent, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah, when
yeah.
we see all these old writings, I had this amazing conversation with this group called RPK, Resurrection Prophecy Kingdom. And Brother Elvin, Elvin Israel, is a brilliant guy, super duper smart. And then everybody else within that group, uh, you know, uh, Josephus and oh wow, I can't remember everyone's names. There were a good bunch of them. We sat down and had this just amazing conversation with them, and they were talking about like if you want to read something like the Bible, you can read it, but you can't read it with your modern day mind. You need to read it with the idioms in mind, the idioms of the time, and you're going to need to buy a book that explains the idioms of the time to you. So when you say something like, "Oh, Saint Patrick drove the snakes from Ireland," that would have been an idiom of that time. They weren't talking about literal reptiles. They were talking about druids. They were calling them snakes, right? They
Mhm,
were referring to them. It was a slur, right?
mhm.
So that was an idiom of the time, which nowadays people really think he just drove a bunch of reptiles out of a country. Like, no, bro, that's not what they were talking about. That wasn't the slang. That's not how they spoke. You need to think about the way when you're reading these ancient manuscripts, these ancient documents, these things that have traversed hundreds and thousands of years of time, and you need to consider the way people spoke when they wrote that. You can see it even in Shakespeare. He says, "Come bite my thumb." That's "suck my dick" in Shakespeare, right? Like,
Who wasn't a real person, by the way.
right? It was like Queen Elizabeth or something like that.
Shakespeare wasn't a
Um.
real, not a real human being. He did not
Oh,
exist.
okay.
No, that's for like legit. That's not even a fucking conspiracy theory. Shakespeare was not a real person.
I was under the impression that like it was a pen name for like Queen Elizabeth or something like that, or the
Yeah,
Queen of the time. Or whatever. But anyway, like they used like when they wrote that, they used the way they spoke at the time, and that's how they wrote it. That was slang at the time. That was an
right.
idiom.
Hmm. Yeah, just like
Nowadays you say
in
"come bite my
500
thumb."
years, like you're about to say, in 500 years from now, people are going to be looking at, I don't know, there's not going to be any remnants of digital technology left then, but they'll be looking at LOL and they'll be looking at OMG and WTF, and they'll be like, they'll probably have a totally different fucking idea of like not just what it says, but the context in which it's being used, just because they're not
Right,
here to understand.
right. I mean, think about the word "thick" right now. You
Right.
describe something as thick, or you describe a woman as thick. That's hot. It's sexy. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Yeah. 500 years from now, they're gonna be thick. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why do they spell it with two C's? Who's in charge of this language?
Why'd they spell it with two C's?
Like, yeah, they can see stuff like that. And we're gonna have, right? Oh my God, can you imagine the Scientology books 500 years from now? People could be looking at this shit and be like, mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. Yep. And while I'm willing to believe in your deities, to a point, I don't buy Scientology at all. That was I actually have a friend named Corey whose uncle sat at a lunch table with L. Ron Hubbard. And L. Ron Hubbard said, "You want to know how you become a millionaire? Start a religion."
Mm. L. Ron Hubbard was CIA as well. Fact.
I 100% believe it.
No, it's
I
a
believe
fact.
it.
Yeah, it's a fact. People have
Man,
already, yeah.
yeah, so they're gonna have these Scientology books later. I mean, honestly, they have enough believers at this point. They could have created some sort of a tulpa out of these Scientology. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of tulpamancy
Yeah.
or egregores. But they could have manifested that. And honestly, like when you have a whole bunch of these deities, like you say, I would just pull something out of here. It looks like a fish, right? It's a talking fish, but it's a deity and exists in the ocean. And if you throw 3 kernels of corn and turn clockwise 3 times, it'll come to you and grant you a wish. And I tell that story in a serious tone, and there will be people that believe me, right? And then those people are going to tell other people who are like-minded, because that's who we hang out with. We hang out with people who are like-minded. You don't want to hang out with people who you want to constantly, you don't want to be 100% like-minded, but you don't want to be constantly fighting with somebody or arguing or debating, So you're going to tell people who are like-minded, they're going to believe it, blah, 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 blah. Now we have thousands of people who believe the same shit, and suddenly it does exist because enough people put enough energy into that belief. They forced its manifestation.
I believe that.
And that is a
100%.
tulpa, right? That's
Yeah.
tulpa, egregore. I mean, I don't really know what an egregore is 100%.
Do you think that's what Crowley was doing?
Oh yeah.
Do you think?
Oh,
But do
100%.
you think he
Crowley
was
doing.
making up his own entity that he was manifesting as reality? Because I wonder this sometimes, because there's the whole thing that he was doing this years long ritual, right? And that he never finished the fucking ritual. And then the idea, some people obviously think, oh, he just left the portal open or whatever, and there's other deities coming through. There's all kinds of theories, but I've always wondered, like, was he just making up his own fucking shit?
Oh, you're talking about Abramelin. Crowley began the process of Abramelin. He never finished, but he didn't do it right.
What is the word that you were just telling me for the other thing?
Abramelin?
No, the
or
one
tulpa?
A tulpa. Maybe I'm just confused.
Tulpa or egregore? No, okay. So Crowley, he stated that he did this while riding horseback through the desert with a friend, and he began the process of Abramelin. The book of Abramelin is a story about Abraham of Worms, and he goes out in the desert and he meets this hermit, this sorcerer, and his name is Abramelin. And Abramelin gives him the secrets to obtain knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel. Part of that process is summoning the 4 kings of hell and getting them to submit to you. And it originally was an 18-month process. There was a French translation that knocked it down to 6 months. But Crowley supposedly began this process in his journals. He definitely didn't do it to the book at all, because it involves a lot of seclusion, and you wouldn't be able to ride on horseback while doing this. Like, you need to be in a place. It's a very, very interesting process. I'm by no means an expert on it. It's very, very interesting though, and if you get a chance to look into that, I definitely would. But yeah, so he started that. He never finished. Crowley had his hands in a lot of cookie jars, and that's just one he never ate all the cookies out of, right? So, but I mean, maybe there's an entire group of people right now. Tulpamancy has picked up a lot of popularity, but it's not the same as like when the Tibetan monks used to do it, where they would gather 100 Tibetan monks into a room, and they would all use the power of their focus on the same thing to create this tulpa.
Manifest
right?
something, right?
Right, and that's what it is. A tulpa is a manifestation of a mass belief within people. So tulpamancy in itself is when an individual forms a sentient being within their own bodies, and it inhabits, you manifest this being into your own vessel, and it inhabits your vessel with you. And then at times it does something they call fronting, where that being takes over your body and gets to use it for a time. They claim it's not dangerous. You can dissolve your tulpa whenever you want to, blah, 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 blah. I've seen a lot of stories where that's not possible, where tulpas have gotten out of control. The whole idea is very dangerous, but in retrospect, and to get it going is not hard. They say if you wanted to create your own tulpa, all you have to do is just start talking in your head, just start talking to something and wait for it to reply. And it'll start to reply, and there it'll begin to build itself. And then it'll
And then
become
that's when
the
you'll
same.
decide if it's like you were saying earlier, is it going to be what'd you say? What did the guy say it was? Is it easy to deal with, or is it a task oriented or whatever? I don't remember what term you used.
Well, no, like the tulpa in itself, like,
Is this a
like I said,
specific
it
deity?
exists. No, like this is a manifestation you create with the thoughts and the energy you put into it, into
Okay.
yourself.
So you're creating your own deity essentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's not even, I mean, I wouldn't call it a deity. I wouldn't even call it a spirit.
An
Well,
entity, maybe.
maybe it'd be a spirit, entity. That's a
I
good
like
word.
the word entity. I feel like that fits like
Mhm.
most. It fits most of the shit, you know.
Yeah, it's like a forced creation.
Mhm.
And there's a community of people that really they do this. They love it. A lot of people find it to be therapeutic. Me personally, I don't like the idea of a sentient, free-willed being inhabiting my body other than me.
Sure.
Right?
Agreed.
Especially
I
if it's
do
going
not consent. I do not consent, entities.
Yeah, it's also one of the reasons I'll never perform the Abramelin rites.
Mm.
Abramelin rites, when they say knowledge, conversation, the holy guardian angel, it's not a literal angel. It's like a piece of the source that comes down, right? And then you're allowing it to possess you. It's a you are giving it permission to possess you. And a lot of people have an amazing experience. They complete these rites and then they love it. And like that's the extent of my knowledge behind it. It is way more complicated than I just explained it.
Sure.
That was the watercolor third grader version
Fair.
of Abramelin.
That's
right?
what I could have. I can digest that right now because my mind has kind of been blown from this whole conversation. So I'm already kind of like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you've given me a lot of shit that I want to like research now to kind of connect more dots. Just because you know I know a lot of base level shit. You know, just like bringing up the Crowley thing. Like I understand that he was doing something that he didn't finish, but like I don't know the whole story. And it's like now you make me want to go and just understand the whole story. You know,
Dude,
it's like.
Dude, and the stuff, and like, and it never ends. Like you pick up one thing and you're learning about it, and then it bleeds into the next, and then you start linking things. Like you have the deity Tammuz, who has a resurrection story that you can link to Jesus, right? And then Abraham, you can sort of link to Abramelin if you want to reach a little bit, and you know the ancient Egyptian mystery schools where Socrates was a student of the mystery schools in ancient Egypt, and like he took that knowledge back with him. And then, you know, and then you have all of these things that just it links here, links here, links here, links here, and I can trace it to that. The angel Michael was a warrior entity under the god Baal before he became something and then eventually became an archangel of Yahweh, and then Yahweh eventually becomes Yodevade, and that's like the unspoken name, and now he's just God or Hosanna or whatever you want to call him, right? And then who knows if God's even a him? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
It's just a mind, in my opinion.
like
It's a mind. It's an intelligent mind of sorts, like you were saying before. Like we're all just a thought experiment. That's in my personal opinion. I mean, you know, believe what you want, but I think it's just
and
mind.
I genuinely feel like God, like when they describe him as a him, it's just because that was the preferred pronoun of the time period, right?
Sure.
We were talking about a man run world.
Yeah, patriarchal
women
society.
were nothing at that time period. So obviously, right, like, and you have this all encompassing entity. It's got to be a dude, right? And that's like the thought period of time. Like that's also why, like, when I'm interacting with like witchcraft groups and they're she this, her that, um, I never get upset about that. And occasionally we'll see like a guy in there like, oh, you're being discriminatory towards men. That's sexist. And it's like, look, guy, look at your normal vernacular throughout your whole day. Everything's guys, hey, dude, hey, man. Like, I call chicks dude all the time. They don't even like being called chicks. That was a misogynist term. Whatever.
Yeah. I
Anyway,
mean,
I call women man.
it's
I'll be like,
true.
yo, dude, yo, man.
There's so much nuance in everything now. I feel like
You know?
anybody who takes a hard stance on any
Right.
of these things that are like a social issue today, I'm not going to say that. Let me step back because there's a lot of good social issues, but what we're talking about, if you're
Facts.
taking a hard stance on something and you're not willing to like think in a nuanced way about it, and then you're just not being honest with yourself. You know what I mean? Like the reality is
Right.
the society that is built is a patriarchal society. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily one of these people that's out here like hate all men. You know what I mean? But you know, there is some truth to that for sure. You know, same with the cops thing, right? Like not all cops are
like,
bad, but like sure, there is some fucked up cops, just like in any other profession. There's fucked up everybody's, you know what I mean? So it's like
there's enough of them that it's a problem.
for sure, yeah. And I'm with you, you know what I mean?
Man.
And I get it, but you know, there's like again, it's the hard stance, right? You could either be like all cops are bad, all cops are good, or you can have a nuanced opinion about it and be like, yeah, there's some fucking shit going on that we need to fix, but there's some good people who do things that we don't, you know what I mean? It's like, so
yeah, and that's just like those pronouns, the she, her thing, and they're crying that is sexist. And like it's to me, it's not. It just feels like the preferred pronoun in the vernacular of that group that talks. Oh, sure, Ken. I've definitely seen people who classify themselves as witches who'd be like, fuck guys, fuck dudes, men are garbage, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, all right, well, you as an individual are a huge scumbag. Fuck
there's
you.
shitty people in every
I'm gonna go
group.
hang out with this whole group over here. Almost every single one of my books on magic, the book that came with my Oracle deck, uses feminine oriented pronouns and adjectives, right? And it doesn't bother me because like historically, if you think about it, Spanish Inquisition was not about burning witches. It was the Christian church ran out of Christians to fucking burn, heretic Christians, whatever. Then they came for the witches because like they ran out of their fellow Christians to light on fire. But you know,
they
if
ran
you think
out of
about the
Central
time
and South
period,
Americans to fucking exterminate too.
Right. Exactly. And then
that was going on a long time after there was colonies, so they were still fucking up people in Central and South America.
Fuck yeah, it was. But when you look at the time period, we're also looking at it was a misogynistic patriarchal time period. So if you were to point a finger at a man and be like, you're a witch, they would have been like, all right, we're going to sit down. We're going to have a conversation about this. There's going to be a trial. That dude's getting away with it, right? He's not a witch. It could have been completely true. There were men burned at the time period. Let's not get that twisted. They did light dudes on fire. But it was way easier to point at a woman and be like, witch. And they'd be like, definitely put her on a stake. Right? No questions asked. There was no trial. They were like, oh, let's give her a test. Throw her in the fucking water. If she sinks, she's a fucking human. If she floats, she's a witch. Either way, the bitch
if she
dead.
weighs less than 100 pounds, you know, back in Salem witch trials, if you had a petite girl who was less than 100 pounds when she was of age, yeah, they burn her as a witch.
You know, it's insane, man. So like everything that they did, and people, and I feel like it's a class of humanity in general where people don't remember the good things you've done, right? Maybe for a couple decades they do, unless you were like somebody like Abraham Lincoln who stood out. But people will not remember the good things you've done. The things that will carry on are the bad things you've done, because as a human being, as a human race, we like to focus on the negative, and in a way that keeps us alive. It gives us a sense of a healthy sense of you know, like precaution or whatever, but we focus on the negative, so they're going to remember that. And they really at the time periods of these things and focused on women. They were easy targets, right? So the term witch, which should really be a gender neutral term, is very feminine now. So it makes sense that within these communities that they're using feminine pronouns. It makes sense, and I don't find it to be sexist to be using those pronouns in the vernacular when you're talking to people. How the fuck did we end up on this topic?
I don't know. Who knows, man? I don't know. All I know is that we went almost like 2 hours.
Oh shit! Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm cool. I can keep going and going and going and going and
Yeah,
going.
me too.
But
I could too, but I have to get up to go to work tomorrow,
I
pretty
dig it.
early, unfortunately. But dude, listen, I really appreciate you coming on, man. I know this was like really impromptu, so everybody knows we did not plan this. This was literally like a 2 hour fucking heads up, and CJ came on. So I really
I was at the
appreciate.
grocery store and Taco Bell.
Yeah, man. You know, and I was on the way home from work, like I need somebody to film. Um, there's some good things coming down the pipeline. I'm not going to give anything away yet. You guys will see CJ in the future. Um, CJ, tell everybody whatever you want to tell them, man. Where are they going to find you guys at?
Really, you can find me and all the guys at on Infinite Rabbit Hole. We have an amazing crew right there right now between Wes, Jeremy, Andrew, and I. We all come at you from a different direction with the way we think. Like I'm very occult focused and metaphysical, and Andrew's very skeptical and very logical, and Wes is very science oriented, and Jeremy is an entity in himself. He's all over. He's a brilliant guy. A lot of respect for him. And really, like you can find us on the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast, and we have these amazing conversations. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into things, and a lot of research, and it's a lot of fun too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Production sounds really good. You guys put out good content. I listen to it almost every day. I try to squeeze it in if I
Mhm.
can. So it's good shit. I suggest everybody go to Infinite Rabbit Hole. CJ, thanks again. Hopefully, with our little fucking technical issue halfway through this, everything recorded. If not, we'll have to redo it. You know what I mean?
It was a
So
fun conversation. It was a fun conversation anyway.
it was, bro. I appreciate you coming on, man. Hopefully, I'll talk to you soon and be safe out there, brother.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, man. Take it easy.
Yeah, you too, man.